We planted over 200 tulip bulbs as an experiment for future cut flowers. Some we forced by growing indoors. Most we planted outside in containers on the patio. Having only grown tulips by accident, I had a lot to learn. All were subject to a little bit of abuse or neglect, which taught me a lot. In this video, I'll share with you the 6 most important things I learned and what I'm doing differently this time. We garden in a USDA hardiness zone that blends 8B and 9A. That variance, along with our marine climate, gives us a growing environment with a lot of moisture, some light freezes, and a bunch of hail and rain in the fall and throughout the winter. We also have a challenge of low growing temperatures during the season in spring and summer. The ocean is less than 10 miles west of here and brings a large amount of coastal fog, fast winds, and an ever-changing weather forecast. The large amount of spring rain we receive is perfect for growing tulips. I saw an ad for a package of 250 assorted tulip bulbs on a super discount end-of-season sale last year. The variety would allow me to compare different types of tulips and start finding my favorite types. I received the tulips in October of 22, placed them in a cool room, and promptly forgot about them until December. Tulip bulbs can be stored under the right conditions for a long period of time. My research into what those exact conditions are led to a lot of variance in information. The room I used was about 50 degrees Fahrenheit and about 50% humidity, I'm estimating. Most tulips need to go through a long cold spell for a process called stratification. Bulbs in the garden go through this process when the temperature drops. Then when the soil warms up in the spring, they know it's time to grow. But an unheated room in my house wasn't cool enough. So I put them in the refrigerator in the garage away from any fruits and vegetables. This is going to mimic the winter, and when they are planted in a warmer environment, it will signal to the bulb that spring is here and it's time to grow. My research showed about 12 to 14 weeks of stratification is required, but I didn't realize it and planted them out after only 6 weeks. I learned to get blooms earlier from tulips. I can bring them indoors, and I decided to try it with a few. We used 10 small galvanized containers and put 3 bulbs in each of them. For those going outside, we filled up 3 galvanized tubs with compost, placed them on the patio, and started planting. When planting for cut flowers, bulbs can be planted closer together than usually recommended. I decided to experiment with spacing. In one container, I planted 40 bulbs. In the second container, I planted them lasagna style, planting one layer of 30 bulbs, covering those with soil, and adding another layer of 30 bulbs covered with soil. In the third container, I again planted using the lasagna method, but instead of using 30, I used 40 bulbs in each layer. So I ended up with a container with 40 bulbs, a container with 60 bulbs, and a container with 80 bulbs. One of the pests we battle here are slugs and snails. Planting in containers helps limit the access to those plants and makes them easier to find when we're out slug hunting. The planters are pretty close to the house, so we've not had any other pests bother the planters on the patio. If you watched our last video, you know we've had wild turkeys visiting the farm frequently. They don't seem to mind getting pretty close to the house. Tulips need a lot of water. Both the indoors and the outdoor tulips needed more watering than I gave them. The tulips indoors needed water every single day, and the outdoor tulips needed water in between raindrops a few times a week. I left some tulips out in the pot that overwintered, and I noticed that those bloomed before the ones I planted in the galvanized containers on the patio. The tulips on the patio started blooming in late April. Planting a variety of tulips allows for multiple weeks of blooms. We enjoyed watching different colors of tulips pop up out of the containers at different times. We didn't harvest very many of these tulips and just enjoyed them as they bloomed on the patio. This year I harvested the bulbs and I stored them indoors. They will again be victims of some experimentation this fall. Cutting will take the energy away from the bulb and away from recovery. These bulbs generally will not bloom the following year or will not bloom very well. My research indicated that some of the Darwin hybrid tulips can tolerate this sort of cutting and coming back again. It's definitely something I want to look into because tulip bulbs are very expensive. So definitely for next year, I will be planting a variety of blooms to again get multiple weeks of blooms from the garden. I'm going to plan on watering a lot more. Indoors, I'm looking at either using larger containers that will hold more water or putting fewer tulips in each container. There's some other things up my sleeve too. I'll continue to use the lasagna method for the containers on the patio, but I won't use them for cut flowers going forward. I'm also making sure the tulips get enough cool weather. For those going outside, we're still early enough in the season that they will get many weeks of cool weather, but for those that may be forced indoors, they are cooling and chilling in the fridge. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, and if you want to see more of our adventures from the farm, subscribe. Until next time, thanks for visiting.